very thematic.
Yes. Yeah, we need some what's the we need to we need to figure out if we can fight we need to hire an exterminator, I guess, as you were,
Mhm.
to get these mice out of here. But we have Gruul on the left-hand side of your screen in the hands of Jeff Schultz and Boros in the hands of Connor. Now, the core of these decks very similar. Emberheart Challenger, Hardfire Hero, Manifold Mouse, Monstrous Rage. You're used to those kinds of cards. The differences here, as far as the Boros side of things is concerned, we have 4 Lightning Helix, 2 Boros Charm, 2 Shard Mage's Rescue, and 3 Sheltered by Ghosts. And then as far as the green cards on Jeff's side of things, we have 2 Paw Patch Recruit, 3 Questing Druid, 1 Sentinel of the Nameless City, and 3 Innkeeper's Talents. Now, if you're asking me as far as what side I would want to be on, it's close. I think that, in these kinds of red mirrors, there is a tendency for these games to go a little bit longer where you're both trading off a bunch of cards. And in that side of thing, I think in the games that go a little bit longer, I'd rather be on the questing druid side of things. But if the game is going a little bit faster, which I would say happens more of the time than the longer games, I'd rather be on the side that has sheltered and lightning helix, which is a whole bunch of ways to gain life. Which Mason, I don't know if you know this, but gaining life pretty good in a red mirror.
Yeah, pretty helpful. And while we're talking about all of that, a couple things happened. Heartfire Hero got burst lightninged, and then Manifold Mouse got played. Higher Claw got played. We double striked and we attacked. And now Jeff's decided no blocks. Not gonna risk trading my throw my Higher Claw away for a couple life points. As Connor is now figuring out post combat we want to do, as we do have a couple of plays available to us.
Yeah, here's another big difference is Connor is playing Slickshot Show Off and Jeff is not playing that card. You don't typically see Slickshot in the Gruul versions because they're a lot more creature heavy. Like, for example, Connor has 21 creatures to Jeff's 26. So a little bit less spells in Jeff's deck for the Slickshots. But Slickshot is more potent in the white version because of the access to Boros Charm, where you can envision a scenario where if Jeff is tapped out, you can just go Slickshot, cast 1 or 2 spells, double strike my Slickshot. That's just going to be lethal the turn that it comes into play. So it has that avenue as well.
Yep. And we're seeing Jeff here play another Higher Claw. It's going to be 2 triggers from the ping and the 1 damage. And we're going to hold up this Monster's Rage, maybe as a way to fight around something like Burst Lightning or Torch the Towers. We see one of those in hand for Connor. As Connor now has Emberheart Challenger, Manifold Mouse, and that Slickshot Show Off plotted we talked about before. The Screaming Nemesis, the last one there. And that's a good last one in these red mirrors.
Yeah, Nemesis is quite good in this matchup. And, Jeff, the other thing that Jeff could be doing too is posturing, right? Maybe potentially telling Connor, like, hey, I have a Torch the Tower. If you want to go for something like some sort of, monstrous rage on Slickshot Show Off, I can prevent that. But as you mentioned, here's a Burst Lightning on the Hard Claw, and the monstrous rage is going to protect that. Now, granted, even though it's protected this turn, still doesn't really have any great blocks here. So likely going to be taking 6 damage. And just wanted to highlight Screaming Nemesis as a card that is phenomenal in these matchups because typically the red decks, their kill spells are all damage based, right? So in a situation where you are targeting Screaming Nemesis with something like a Torch the Tower or a Burst Lightning, it's almost always going to get a second card out of the exchange. And you see here, Jeff's like, well, I have to lose my entire board, but the alternative is letting Connor keep the Screaming Nemesis. And I mean, either situation looks pretty bad as you see Jeff's board just entirely gone now.
Yep, and you're seeing Jeff pass the turn with the Questing Druid in hand. Borostrom picked up here for Connor, a way to push a bunch of damage in various forms. Deal 4 or double striking. The Slickshot Show Off is a way to often push a lot of damage as a kicked Manifold Mouse comes out. You see Jeff shake his head like, yep, that's pretty good. And this is one of the nice things about these mice, Devin, how much card advantage they provide despite being an aggressive deck.
Right, exactly. They're not only very, very fast. Like you typically associate the red deck with the turn 1 Hardfire, turn 2 Manifold Mouse for 2 mana starts, where when you have those kind of starts, you're attacking for 4 on turn 2, and it's really hard for your opponent to keep up. But the combination of the Offspring on Manifold Mouse plus the Valiant trigger on Emberheart Challenger gives you the ability to just grind through so many like removal spells and I think we're seeing a little bit of mana troubles here from Jeff, not able to deploy a third land and did not find a land off of the questing druid. That is brutal.
Yep. We were able to play this Manifold Mouse off the Druid, but our hands is two Emberheart Challengers and, excuse me, two Screaming Nemesis and an Emberheart Challenger, which will be great if we can answer the Slick Shot and get some lands on the board. But until then, we're in trouble as Lightning Helix comes down on Manifold Mouse.
Yeah,
That's
I
gonna be
think
game.
we're done here. So you can
It's
Helix
very
the
close.
Manifold Mouse, double strike the Slick Shot. That's 10, 11, 12, 13. So I believe this is going to put Jeff down to 1.
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me as the Slick Shot's now representing, well, 10 damage.
Oh, no, right. It is. It's, yeah,
Yep.
so it's 5, 10, 14. Yeah, it should be
Yeah, this
exact
is
these.
Yeah, as Jeff is like, yeah, that's pretty good. And one of the advantages of playing this Boros deck is you lose a little bit of that grind potential that we see from the Gruul deck, but you gain a lot of burst damage.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the white cards come up there. Lightning Helix, kill the creature, gain 3 life, and then Boros Charm in combination with Slick Shot show off. Like the double strike after you cast a spell or two is just able to represent so much damage. So the white cards definitely came up there for Connor.
Yeah, I think one of the things to think about with the Boros Mice deck is it's a lot more like playing the like Gruul Leyline deck, where it's a lot more like bursty, combat tricky, where the Gruul deck proper, as we're looking at it here for sideboarding for Jeff Schultz, is much more of like a aggressive deck that can play a mid-range backup plan. But let's take a look at our sideboard and see what we might bring in here as 1 Ghost Vacuum, 3 Lithomantic Barrage, 2 Obliterating Bolt, 2 Obstinate Baloth, 3 Paw Patch Formation, 2 Pyroclasms, and 2 Sunspine Links. Devin, what are you sliding in?
So this is kind of interesting, right? If Jeff was playing a traditional Gruul mirror, right, I would assume Pyroclasm is something you want access to regardless, because if if they're on the play and or even if your opponent's not on the play and they just start with hero into Manifold Mouse, it's a good way to clean that up. You can also kind of play around your own Pyroclasm by having a challenger in play, and you don't have to overcommit to it. Paw Patch is maybe a little bit more interesting against the Boros version than the Gruul version. Even though Jeff didn't see any enchantments from Connor, you can kind of expect that part of the reason you would want to play white is the inclusion of Sheltered by Ghosts. You can probably assume there's at least 3, maybe 4 copies.
Mhm.
So, and can still kill the Slick Shot show up as well. So I like the Paw Patches, I like the Pyroclasms, and probably the Obliterating Bolts as well.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Let's check out what Connor has in the Boros Mice build. And we have 2 Authority of the Consoles, 3 Destroy Evils, 2 Exercise, 3 Rest in Peace, a Sheltered by Ghosts, 2 Sunspine Links, and 2 Urbrass Forge.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the white cards being, very good in a matchup like this, but sheltered by ghosts. And Connor has even more good white cards in the sideboard. Has the 4th copy of Sheltered by Ghosts and 2 Authority of the Consoles. So those 3 seem like slam dunks here. Past that, not seeing a lot else. Destroy Evil doesn't have a ton of targets. There's Innkeeper's Talent, but probably a little too narrow there. Same thing with Exercise. Not a Rest in Peace matchup, not a Forge matchup, and not a Lynx matchup. So, yeah, really just the authorities and the sheltered. But I do think that Connor with the Helixes and the main deck sheltereds already has an advantage in this matchup. So doesn't really need to do a ton during sideboarding.
I agree with that. I think a little bit favored in at least the fast games. As speaking of fast games, our players are shuffling up here for game number 3, but we're going to quickly take a look at some of our future events in case you want to come on out and battle it out. And we're going to be in Chicagoland Saturday, May 10th with our modern 10K showdown. And then Sunday, 5K standard trial on the 11th. You're going to come out and play in that event, get your chance to go to our championship. And worst comes to worst, you can always watch it here at twitch.tv/NRG series. Make sure to follow along. That way you don't miss any of the action. Where you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of our future matches. We like to bring all these to you. And speaking of bringing it to you, these players, we're going to bring it down to them as they are presenting to cut here for game number 2. We're only halfway through our tournament, Devin. 3-0 is a great start, but a long way to go before you're in that coveted top 8.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't ask for a better start than 3-0, but There is a lot more Magic to be played for these players. I was, taking a look at towards the top of our standings, and I don't know if you saw the same thing I did, but there is a lot of red decks over there. So,
The
and
red
that's
cards are
honestly
really good.
but yeah, that's a really good sign for Connor, right? If you have decided to play this Boros version of the red deck because you perceive it to be a lot better in the mirror match, and there's a lot of other red decks, then you got to imagine that's a good place to be for Connor.
As speaking of a place to be, we're going to mount and go into Battlefield Forge Authority of the Council here for Connor. He's sort of zigging when Connor is zagging.
Now, Authority is a fantastic card in the fast games, right? In the games that are involving, turn one hero, turn two manifold mouse, Ember Heart Challenger, all these haste creatures. I will say the green deck, the green version, again, as we talked about, has a little bit better of a late game, right? Has the questing druids, has Sentinel of the Nameless City. Connor, or excuse me, Jeff has, I believe the names are swapped, so I got confused there.
I
I
did.
believe
Yeah, I
Jeff
got a little mess up too.
Jeff has 4 copies of Screaming Nemesis, where Connor only has 2. So I would say Jeff is favored in the late game. And my point that I'm getting at here is Authority is much worse in the games that go longer, right? Authority is great if your opponent's got 4 or 5 creatures early, but if you're playing a bit of a slower game where it's kill your creature, play a questing druid, not as good in those games.
And speaking of not as good, some stuff has happened since we talked about it. Ember Heart Challenger got played, got Burst Lightning, Higher Claw came down, and now Connor's having to figure out, excuse me, Jeff, as our names are swapped. We'll get that fixed in just a second. It got me there. How we want to play this here is Manifold Mice is going to enter. It's going to be tapped. We're going to gain a life here.
I'm not crazy, right? We had him right for game one.
We did have them right for game one. I'm unsure what happened. A little bit of magic happening here.
We're good now. Just gonna make sure we make sure we tell Norm about that in future rounds. Just so he specifically knows about it. I know he's definitely not listening to me right now, but we have an Ember Heart Challenger here for Connor. I almost said Jeff. I almost got confused myself. But yeah, this is kind of the Connor wants to be because Jeff has more of that late game stuff to be talked about, the druids and the more nemesis. I don't know if Connor really ever wants to be playing a game that goes long. Like, it feels like almost every single time Connor is the beatdown. We always talk about this, who's the beatdown, right? And you would think that in an aggro versus aggro mirror match, it's just whoever's in the play. But I don't know if that's necessarily the truth, because I think maybe Jeff realizes that his deck is a little bit better in the late game, so he wants to be more of the kill your creature, let's play a longer game. Especially against that Authority too,
Yeah. It looks like players are just double checking their life totals. The mana is a little awkward with the Pain land and the Rock Face Village, and then the Authority's gaining land. So, gaining life. The land is losing. So I think players are just trying to make sure we're all on the same page, as Screaming Nemesis is trying to make that life gain less of an issue.
Mason, you know what that land that Jeff just played is?
That is a Soulstone Sanctuary.
I was trying to trick you on the alt arts.
No, you won't.
To be fair, there's not really a lot of like alt art lands. Either the dual lands, which those are colored. You can pretty clearly tell what those are. So I couldn't get you this time.
Not going to catch me slipping, as Manifold Mouse isn't going to get caught slipping either, as it gives itself double strike into Monstrous Rage for an 8-point life swing here. And this is one of the things we didn't talk about too much. The life gain's nice from Connor's deck, but these Gruul decks deal damage in huge chunks that sometimes the life matters a lot because you're at 1, and sometimes you're at -10.
Yeah, when you're getting attacked by a 4-power double strike creature, gaining 3 life, not going to matter that much in the grand scheme of things. You see Jeff's last card, I believe there was a Pyroclasm, looking pretty nice on this board. Now that you get a 2/3 and a 3/3, and Connor has a 1/2. So maybe if Connor deploys, say, 2 things, you just kind of just destroy. The game ends on the spot with that Pyroclasm.
I think so, as it looks like Monstrous Rage, Burst Lightning, Manifold, and an unknown here from Connor. A lot of plays available. One of the hard parts of this Gruul deck is just how much of your deck, is playable every turn. You just starting pretty early on, you can do anything you want.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, We talked about that Pyroclasm, and Mason, I think we're going to game 3 here in just a moment.
Yeah, it's going to be really brutal, as we are going to get in for 2 here with the Higher Claw, one the trigger, one from the attack. But Jeff is going to deal a ton of damage here in just a second. And we talked about that Soulstone Sanctuary. It's in play. If we draw another untapped land, we can animate it and double strike it as well. So there's a lot of damage coming over these next 2 turns. And Connor has this, authority, but not really what the game is about in this one, as, Connor doesn't have the tools to really take advantage of the authority the council buys a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how this game has played out because Connor had the turn 1 authority, but Jeff kind of had more of the I drew double striker plus monstrous rage draw, and authority, like you mentioned, not as good against that kind of start because all you need to do is untap with 1 creature, and you can kind of put so much pressure on your opponent. And we talked about how Jeff. It's almost seems like Jeff is maybe the control deck in this matchup. But I mean, sometimes you have draws like this where it's just double strike rage. I don't need to be, we don't need to play a late game. I'm just going to get you dead as quick as possible.
Yeah, and I think you really hit on something big there when you're saying, Jeff's kind of the control. He has more of the interactive pieces where Connor is trying to play that game, but has more of the burst damage. I think, a little bit of temptation here from this authority maybe has got the best of Connor, but there's still game number 3 to be played, as Connor can get on board here, but the Nemesis is basically unblockable. You can't really get it. And we have the land to turn the Soulstone Sanctuary online. It's a
Yeah,
tough spot to be.
I don't know if this is maybe a good way to put it, but it almost feels like Jeff has more agency in this matchup as to how he can play the game, where because he has a better late game, he has the ability to say, okay, if I want to do this, I can kill your stuff and draw questing druids. But I mean, both decks still have the rage manifold hardfire hero start. So both players, if you're on the play, sometimes that's just how the game goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As we're going to see Higher Claw get in the way of Manifold Mouse, Jeff drew a Monstrous Rage. Didn't want to animate the Soulstone land because of the Monstrous Rage. Now is going to give Connor a chance to cast a spell, but Jeff in response is going to cast Monstrous Rage back on the Manifold, and that's going to be lethal. Connor does not have a Torch the Tower type card, and we're going to pack it up for game number 3 here as these players are getting ready for that. And, these games, they're short, but there's a lot of really intense decisions, especially in the mulliganing and sideboarding portion of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there is a lot of play draw disparity as well. And not disparity, but play draw, like in terms of what you want your plan to be when you're on the play versus the draw. A card like Authority of the Consoles, maybe a little bit better on the draw when you're on the back foot, but it's perhaps maybe Connor now that Connor's in the play, maybe he wants to go and just be a little bit more aggressive, doesn't want to go towards something like that. Or something like the removal spells too, where it's just there is a lot of that play draw dynamic. And then in terms of from Jeff's side of things, right, where the stuff like questing druid, maybe you have more time to deploy cards like that on the play, not so much time as on the draw. So
Definitely. Well, let's quickly take a look at one of our other upcoming events. We talked about the Chicagoland event, but we're also going to Indianapolis here, June 28th through the 29th. We're doing a 10K standard showdown on Saturday. And then Sunday, we've heard it. Players wanted us to do some limited, so we're trying it here. Team Showdown Final Fantasy Sealed. That's going to be the most recent standard set at the time. So you're going to want to come out and play in that event. It's going to be June 28th and the 29th in Indianapolis. You can head on over to nerdragegaming.com to get all the info in case you are curious on the exact details. So we hope to see you there, and we're going to be streaming all of it there. It's going to be a fun time. We're going to have to see who we get for our Final Fantasy Sealed commentary team. It's going to be a blast.
Oh yeah, I'm always down for team events. The Final Fantasy set is should be pretty interesting to see exactly how that goes. And we really haven't done a ton of like competitive sealed content on the NRG series before, so be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. And as I mentioned, team events are just they're realistically, Mason, they're the best events, right? In terms of full stop. Just if you could play one type of event for the rest of your life and nothing else, it would probably be a team event.
I love that for you. As our players are
I
sideboarding,
mean,
I can't do team events. You know what? I'll say
really?
it. I'll say I just hate team events. I'm tired of acting like I love them. And here's the thing: I get everyone else loves them, so I bring it up. I know that 99% of you
Okay.
love it. I am the 1%. I just can't stand team events. It's just not my bag, baby. I like the 1v1 magic, and I get it. You get to hang out with your friends all weekend, but I don't know. It's never clicked for me, and for various reasons, we could get into the psychology of like the pressure I put on myself to not let my friends down and stuff like that. But I just like it where it's me. If I fail, I only ruin my weekend. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't take down the homies, and I get to go cheer them on when they're doing so well. And I know I can never get over it as our players are still sideboarding here. We take a little bit of time, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not alone in that. I know Twitch chat. Let me know how you feel about things. YouTube commenters, let me know. But I don't know. I always get so anxious going into team events. I don't want to be the guy that like lets my team down.
I respect that. Like you said, I
Yeah.
mean, it definitely, there is some of that, right? It's like you
Mhm.
feel maybe a little bit more pressured because
Yeah.
you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for
Mhm.
the total of three people. So I get that. I respect that.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think there's like the camaraderie and just being able to, play and discuss with your friends all day is,
No, I totally get
love
where other
that.
people are coming from. I just have a lot of anxiety, Devin. That's
I
the
get you.
secret,
I get
you
you.
know. So as we are going to have these players shuffle it up and deal them out here for game number 3, the winner of this will be 4-0, a couple rounds away from drawing in. But you know what? You want the match point is Connor. Pick it up. I've never seen that before, so that's a first. I've watched a lot of Magic on commentary. Delta 7 to pick it up from behind, pull it in. That's a new one,
Yeah.
Connor. You got me there.
I respect it.
I think I might pick it
They're just
up. It
making
might become my
they're
new
just trying to
thing.
keep us on our toes,
Yeah. It's got some style to it, as we do see a mountain into a higher claw.
Yeah, see, now this is what Connor wants. You would much rather have, I mean, again, play draw difference matters, right? Where it's like maybe on the draw authority is better a better turn one play, but on the play you'd rather just have any one mana creature. So Connor, see if there's a kill spell, a hero.
I need a Heartfire hero
I
when
need
it
a
comes down.
hero.
Mountain number 2 into Emberheart Challenger, an attack for 4, essentially, off the higher claw trigger, putting Jeff at 16. And this is what I like to see from Connor. Connor is the bursty Boros deck. Let's
Uh
put
huh.
Jeff on the back foot as
Yeah, I
Manifold
mean,
Mouse is the draw.
we talked about during sideboarding how we think that if we were to assign roles, I think Jeff would be the control deck and Connor would be the beatdown deck. There shouldn't be 3 counters on that. It should be 2.
Yeah, I think that's a dexterity error. I think Jeff thinks that, my mouse is a
Yeah.
3/3. We'll get that fixed, though. We'll let the judge know, and
But
our
yeah, this
spotter
is
as well.
kind of going back to that dynamic where it's like, Jeff now on the draw has a bit better of a late game if we can get there. Problem is with Connor in the play, it's a little harder to get there.
Yeah, 1, you have 2 on your thing, and 2, use our big dice. Mason's got bad eyes. Put them on there as we're attacking in here for 3.
You and me both.
Yeah.
It's time for some new glasses. Is that that's the carnival, right? The 13 lifeland I think that I saw in Connor's hand.
Yes, yeah, Connor has those carnival lands, which are pretty good in these aggressive mirrors, If you're going to be playing the tap lands anyways that have the chance to sometimes be untapped, it's a pretty interesting way to look at it. It looks like we're going to Monstrous Rage and
Hmm.
hit another Monstrous Rage.
Is that good?
That's a lot of damage here.
Call
I
that a
think Connor was looking for a
combo.
land, but yeah, it looks like we're maybe Jeff's like, hey, if you need to borrow one, I got you.
Math time. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Prowess is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Plus the hard claw trigger is 12. Did I
I
do that
think
right?
that sounds right to me. And that's going to put Jeff down to 4 if Connor doesn't have anything else to play. And we do soon have a Rock Face Village. That won't do very much for us here unless you're another higher claw. But yeah, I mean, this Ember Heart is presenting a ton of damage. And the higher claw ain't shabby either.
I just hope I got my math right.
I think
That's
you
all I'm looking
did.
for.
As Jeff is going to fall down very low. Now, here's the thing. Jeff could easily kill Connor next turn. You go land,
Yeah, he does
Manifold
have the
Mouse,
manifold, right?
Monstrous Rage, game's over. That's lethal.
So manifold would be 3. Manifold rage would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's only 8, right?
Oh, is it? Oh,
I
excuse
think
me.
it's
Yeah, so we're
16.
yeah, I guess we're one off. So
I think.
that does sound right. Actually, after you start saying, it, I felt like so much more, and it looks like the players just double confirming because prowess, I think, is causing us thing here. So Amber Heart Challenger is at a 5, and then +2 from the
Right.
Rage.
So yeah, base powers is 3 and 2. That's 5. 2 prowess is 7. Plus 4 from the rages. That's 11. Plus 1 from the claw should be 12.
Yeah. So I guess can Jeff win if we have a way to kill? I guess we don't have any of the flings, and Witch Doctor Frenzy won't be able to play. But yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
no, I think the most amount of damage that Jeff can get to next turn is 16 with land, manifold, rage.
yeah, I think that sounds rightish to me. I guess you could do some interacting with the opponent's board, but yeah, I'm a little confused as to what we're talking
We're
about
doing the math
here.
again.
I guess what's possible is maybe we've missed the higher claw trigger or something. I'm not sure. The way the judge
You
seems to be
can't
explaining something. Yeah, but
you can't you can't miss prowess, right? Because you don't have
you
to
can't
actually
miss prowess.
prowess
No.
to deal damage.
Yeah, the way prowess works is as long as you remember it when it comes time for damage, you've remembered it. It's not really a
Right.
trigger.
Yeah.
You just have to say it when you go to damage. Be like, okay, this is a 4/4, for example. But we're seeing these rage go on here, and it's hard to
I mean,
believe how much damage is happening.
look, Mason, I don't blame him. Math is really hard. Math was
Yeah.
never. I don't know about you, but math was never my strong suit. And I think
I'm good
my
at the
viewers
magic
will
type math.
my
It's
viewers can
like the
confirm.
hypergeometric calculator math that I am not good at.
Oh,
So,
like when you're playing Neoform.
mhm.
Did you see that?
No.
The Neoform person on camera, I think it was at the RC, where they had the TI calculator to calculate how many cards were left in the library.
Is that allowed?
Anyways, I mean, the judge said it was fine, I guess. So.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, and we're gonna see a land.
All right, there we go. If at
post-combat.
4, math was ripe. Oh, and the authority. So even if it was that would have been funny if Connor was at 16 and Jeff
Yeah.
actually had land rage manifold, and he's like, okay, well, I go to 17, so now
Yeah.
and he does have land rage manifold in hand.
Yeah, he has. I mean, 16 damage is so much on turn number 2, but as you turn number 3, pardon me, but yeah, it's so. I mean, this deck is so good, but unfortunately, I think Jeff is not going to be able to get across the finish line. Nor do I think we have the mana to deploy at all. But yeah, I think Jeff's saying like, look, I could have done this, but it's just not enough.
So I guess can we survive if we play defense, assuming there's no spell?
It looks like you can, but we know Connor has the Rock Face Village, which presents lethal.
It's just dead on board, right? Because they're both 3s. You attack with both, claw puts you to 3, then you can pump the claw.
Yep. True, I forgot about the higher claw trigger.
A kill spell if we have. Oh, did we just not have a land?
We don't have another mana. It's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Connor's going to move on to 4-0 as long as we're willing to move to the combat step, I believe. And speaking of belief, here's Screaming Nemesis, which more than enough to win this game as the higher claw trigger is going to happen. Jeff going to fall to 3 lethal attackers, and this is going to show I have a handful of good stuff, but it wasn't good enough. And that's the burst that we're talking about that, all these red decks had access to. Connor didn't really do anything that was white in game number 3 here, but we saw in game number 1 how that Boros Charm led to some really explosive draws. And, this deck has a lot of punch to it, Devin.
Absolutely. And, we definitely, that kind of dynamic that we kept talking about where it seemed like Connor was the aggressive deck and Jeff was the control deck. Now, granted, all 3 players in the play won their respective games. So that's not necessarily, control versus aggro role. But it does seem like Connor's deck is a lot more suited to be the aggressor. So in these kinds of matchups where you have to go fast, I do feel like Connor's deck on the balance is better at doing that than the rule versions.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And we have a backup match. So it makes a lot of sense for me to see some more Magic because it's one of my favorite things to watch is we see Wesley Hickman on your left here versus Sean Gallagher on your right. Mono red aggro versus Azorius control.
Yeah, the other red deck. We saw Gruul. We saw Boros. How about no second color? So this is kind of the traditional Quintanole, who popularized this back at Worlds, I believe. I think this might just be Quinn's exact list, if I'm remembering
It
correctly.
looks pretty close to it. If not, it's like a card or two deviation
Yeah,
away.
one or
So,
two off.
as we're seeing here, unfortunately for Wesley, fortunately for Gallagher, nothing to do on turn 3. As Sean has a hand with some counter magic in it, has a Jace, has a temporary lockdown, and that's a beating.
Yeah, so just kind of quickly going over for the folks at home and maybe haven't seen these different versions of red decks and why you would choose to play mono red over something like the decks that we just saw, Gruul or Boros. You get a cleaner mana base. There's 17 mountains and 4 rock face villages, so you don't have to worry about tap lands with like Copperline Gorges or Restless Bivouacs, any of that stuff. And honestly, that's pretty much it. Really,
Yep.
that's, you're playing more burn spells, right? This one has 4 Burst Lightning, 4 Lightning Strike. Main deck, Witchstalker's Frenzy, which is definitely a combo with Screaming Nemesis.
Yeah, and that gives you a lot of edge too in those Gruulish mirrors, right? You have a little bit more ways to the reddish mirrors against Gruul, where you have a few more burn spells. Cards like Witchstalker Frenzy do count for the opponent as well. So kind of, this deviation like from the norm to get a little bit of advantage that we see so often in Magic. We saw it with Connor with Boros, and here just mono red as Overlord of Mistmores is going to come down, make some mice. Jason's going to tick back up on the higher claw, and Wesley is just drawn the 6th mountain. He had a little bit of a land heavy start, played around the temporary lockdown, but just has not drawn anything to push through here.
Yeah, this seems like one of those hands where Wesley maybe kept like, 3 lands, 4 spells, and has just only, really just drawn one spell and 3 lands at this point. So kind of hitting the other side of the variance with only 21 lands in the deck. We do have a frenzy taking care of a token.
Yeah, interesting play. I think maybe a little bit of a misstep from Wesley allowing Sean. Maybe he wanted the double block to happen, It's not like it's the end of the world. We're in a bad spot either way. As stock up, that is the card that so often locks things up for these decks.
Yeah, and we didn't touch too much on Sean's deck list, but this is kind of very similar to what we've seen in the previous Azorius control decks that we saw in the feature match earlier in round number 1, where 4 copies of stock up, Overlords, Bezos, Jaces in the main, 3 lockdowns. I don't remember if the previous versions that we saw were playing Ride's End, but Sean has 4 copies of Ride's End today, which is a fantastic way to exile those mice.
Yeah, and we're seeing Sean ticked up on the Swift Spear, even though the higher claw is bigger because of that Ride's End. And Wesley has to be like, well, why would you do that if you don't have a kill spell? You're going to get the trigger from the higher claw down to 10. Sean says, get off this ride to the higher claw.
You must be this tall.
Yeah, and
Lizards, unfortunately, not tall enough to ride the ride.
Very true. As Wesley does have a Monstrous Rage in hand. But honestly, speaking of rage, this Jace is about to make someone rage out of this world, I think, as it's so close to minusing 4 Wesley's deck. I mean,
we talked about math. What's 9 times 3? That's
27.
Yeah,
and I mean, if you have another Jace, that plus the 15, and we see one in hand for Sean, that is basically Wesley's deck.
Okay, let's see if we can do a quick Wesley count. So I can't tell graveyard cards, but 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 12. Say roughly, we'll call it 14 or 15. That leaves Wesley with 45 cards. So that would be 27 plus 15 would be 42.
Yeah. And you're seeing this.
We're close.
Sean doesn't even need to worry about it because Wesley's on another land. He just gets to wait and has his Overlord of the Mistmore to now actually close the game out, as we are going to see 3 steps ahead make a copy of the Overlord of the Mistmores, and Wesley's had enough. Pack him up. Yeah, and you see a smile too. He's like, all right, that's pretty good. And Sean Gallagher, someone you see a lot here, loves to play these control decks. And we're going to take a quick look at Wesley's sideboard.
Yeah, so Wesley is working. Oh, you want to go ahead?
No, I was just going to read off. Excuse me there. Sorry, I had to take a moment to catch my breath. We have 4 Sunspine Link, 3 Shock, 1 Scorching Shot, 3 Lithomantic Barrage, 2 Ghost Vacuum, and 2 Case of the Crimson Pulse. Devin, what are we doing?
Sunspine Links, X4, love it in this matchup. Even for a 2-color control deck, Sean has 8 basics out of 25 lands, so there's a good amount of non-basics there. I'm interested as to the shocks. Now, I think part of it is because maybe just if you feel like you want an extra kill spell in the red matchup, but I wonder if maybe here, if you have enough stuff to board out, just having an extra burn spell is not that bad. The cases seem pretty good, just drawing extra cards against the blue-white deck. So Lynx's case is good. Maybe Shocks if you have enough cards to board out.
All right, and let's look over at Sean Gallagher's sideboard with 2 Authority of the Councils, a Beza, 1 Dissection Tool, 2 Elspeth Smite, 1 Jace of Perfected Mind, 1 Console Flanker, 2 Negate, 2 Recipes, and 3 Tashaya's Tidebinder.
Yeah, so Authority of the Console, not as good against the Gruul versions because they feel like they have, you would still board them in, but not as good because they definitely have ways to kind of burst damage a little bit more, especially the ley line versions. But against Mono Red, that's where Authority shines. Like Mono Red is a lot more about the haste creatures and less about the burst damage. So Authority is fantastic. Elspeth Smite's definitely a slam dunk, and the Beza and probably the Dissection Tools as well for additional life gain.
All right, well, let's head back to our future match areas. This is a time-shifted match. As our players are drawing up their hands, it looks like Sean took a mulligan. Wesley with the Heartfire Hero, excuse me.
Do we have the Manifold Mouse? I think I saw it.
Yeah, and we have the Monstrous Rage. This is why you play these red decks. An attack for 4 here.
2 mana up from Sean could be anything. I mean, honestly, it's more likely to be a kill spell than a counter spell at this point because there's 4 rides in and 2 smites versus just the 3 normalize. So twice as likely to have a kill spell. I can't quite get a good look at Sean's hand.
Yeah, we're seeing this here.
I don't know if I see one.
Yeah, and it looks like Sean targeted double strike, maybe missed the Valiant trigger, but rides in, gonna take out the Manifold Mouse. Looks like our life totals and names are backwards again somehow. I don't know how that happened. We'll get that fixed for you in a second.
There we go.
As Case of the Crimson Pulse comes down, Wesley wanting to play around Counter Magic. This is a really strong card against control decks, theoretically, just gives you a lot of resources and lets you just play into their interaction over and over again. As Sean's
we did miss the counter on the Heartfire here, right? I'm not crazy.
We did. Yeah. Okay. Unless we targeted the Manifold Mouse with the double strike. I doubt we would do that, but maybe we did.
Well, no, because, see Sean at 14. So.
Yeah. Yeah, a small oops, but not the end of the world, as Sean is now.
Well, actually, no, that is right, because the first attack put him to 16, and then if you target double strike on the Manifold, okay, no, that is right.
Yeah, okay, sure, that does make sense.
So you probably targeted the Manifold in the second combat.
Rockface Village is going to target the Heartfire Hero, give it that +1/+0, and then Impart Challenge is going to get cast. Rides in is going to take care of the Heartfire Hero. Sean's going to take 2 more down to 12. As we do have a Fountain Port into it. Could be a temporary lockdown here. It is. It's only going to get 1.
Yeah, lockdown's good, but not being able to kill the case is huge. And I think I saw a Sunspine Lynx in hand for Wesley, although only 2 lands here for Sean, so that's only going to get 2. But you can follow that. I think there's a Rage and a Swift Spear as well. I think I saw a Swift Spear in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm curious if Wesley wants to, get the card or try and get the Swift Spear going to get that extra damage. And it looks like we hit a Screaming Nemesis. That's going to be gone. Swift Spear played post-combat. Trying maybe to hit something like another mouse or another Swift Spear. Sean down to 5, it seems. And there's a land, but it's tapped. No Day of Judgment here.
I think his hand, his hand is Day of Judgment, 2 Overlords, and a Jace, or 3 steps ahead.
And Sean being like, well, we all kind of know it. I'm kind of dead. As another Sunspine Lynx for Wesley here is going to represent a ton of damage. And you're going to see Sean just pack it up there. And I believe that was lethal or close to it. Sean knows he can't recover from that, especially with the case. So we're going to move on to game number 3 here. Do a little time-shifting magic for you here as we are now, in the mulligan stage.
Look at that. We didn't even need to look at shuffling. I can, I will appreciate the Sean flipping the Day of Judgment there at the end. I love that.
Yeah, he's just like, well, I wish I had it. Didn't have it. Such as life.
I have it. I know I have it. Everybody knows I have it. Just wanted to show you that I drew the Seachrome Ghost. That was great.
Unlucky, as they say. As we skipped part of the shuffling, but not all of it, as Sean is down to 6 cards.
At least 6.
Yeah, it could be less.
Wesley's on 7.
I think so, yeah. I think Wesley's on 7 with close to the perfect start, just no Heartfire Hero. Instead has a bunch of higher claws, but we'll have to make do.
And this one looks a little better for Sean. I think I saw 2 lands, a Ride's End, a Normalize, a Day of Judgment, and a Beza.
Yeah.
So not the worst hand here for Sean. Or it might have been a stock up. Okay.
Yeah, another land for Sean. A great draw, actually, since we just want to play this Beza on curve, most likely. As here comes the Challenger.
Challenger. Yeah, and another, like, kind of, we talked about the differences between all these red decks here, and another big part of playing mono red instead of something like Boros or Gruul is getting to play 4 copies of Rockface Village, and that card is so unbelievably good in combination with both Challenger and just all the Challenger, Manifold Mouse, and Heartfire Hero. So getting to be able to play 4 copies of that and not have to worry about a second color of mana is a big reason why these players choose mono red over something like Gruul or Boros.
Yep. As we see Sean pick up a landed dissection tool. Dissection tool very strong. And that land are going to allow for the tool and the Beza and this Day of Judgment. We do have a tap land in hand, but now we're going to get to start playing something. And if Wesley puts another creature on board, we might be getting some fish for Sean off that Beza that we can then move around with the tool.
And it's tough for Wesley, right? It's like, do you play more into the Wrath, or do you not play anything and let Sean Beza? It's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And now Sean even has, Sean just going to Wrath here. And then Wesley's like, okay, well, now that you're Wrath, I'm going to have this big follow-up turn, creature, attack you. And then Sean's like, okay, tap land Beza,
Yep. Into Dissection Tool, which is a powerful card versus these red decks. You're seeing, Wesley think he knows that it's not over yet. He has the tools to fight through a lot, but can he fight through it all? And, offspringing this Manifold Mouse now becomes the big question of, do I get my 2 bodies for 1 card, or do I push more damage this turn with the Challenger?
Yeah, I think it's Manifold, Challenger. I couldn't quite tell what the last card was.
Oh, interesting. So we actually Rockface Village, the Manifold Mouse, and give a double strike and attack for 4, playing around another Wrath effect and playing around Beza, creating an extra body.
Yeah, the fact that he doesn't put an extra body into play, you get the 4 damage, and you don't have to worry about Sean getting extra tokens. Now, from Sean's side of things, the Beza is still a very good blocker against the Manifold Mouse, so still pretty okay with that, and it gets the 4 life off of it as well. So now it can, excuse me, have a good blocker for the Manifold Mouse. Oh, well, I said good blocker, but I think that was a Monstrous Rage that was picked up there for Wesley.
That is huge.
So it may not be a good blocker anymore. So I wonder if now Wesley is thinking about play Challenger, go to combat, give it double strike, and then potentially attack with just the challenge, maybe attack with both. And then if Sean decides to block the Manifold Mouse, you target the Challenger, hit for 12. It's not quite 13, though. I think if he had something like, oh, wait, is this lethal?
It's so close if it's not. Let's see here. Ember Challenger.
Okay, I don't think it's lethal, but I think this forces Sean to chump block the Challenger, right? Because the Challenger is 6. That's 12. 12 minus 5 is 7, plus 3 is 10, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right to me, because it is double striked, right? So it is 6 power.
Yep.
So if you let it connect fully, that'd be an issue. So this Beza is really jumping in the way to absorb 5, which means we're going to hit over for 7, 8, 9, 10, putting Sean to 3. And Dissection Tool might not be enough to get out of this.
Yeah, no, it's actually not going to, because Sean's going to be at 3. Even if he plays tools on board, Wesley can just go activate the land, get it to 4 power, give it double strike, attack, and then the double strike on the
lockdown.
Well, that's
with
big.
3 steps ahead. That is massive. Wesley's next spell is going to get countered as well if it's any good. We need double spell. Manifold Mouse is a great follow-up normally to this spot, but not with the 3 steps from Gallagher. As I think he was 3 steps ahead this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Wesley, even if you assume there's a counterspell, I wonder if you still have to trade for the counterspell here, because then if you draw yeah, okay, this is fine. I was gonna say if you bait the counterspell out here and you draw Lightning Strike, then you're good to go. But you're
Yeah.
gonna have to draw Lightning Strike right now.
Yep. As Dissection Cool comes down, we're gonna oh, and there's Beza going underneath. Yeah, the creature gets +2/+2 lifelink and death touch, and now we're gonna flip that Beza. There's a land in hand. Wesley's just going to play it in case he hits a land off something like a challenger, but now it's flipping over. It's 6 life, and that's just going to be too much. And you see Gallagher's moving very quickly. He knows, okay, I've got this. Is there any way I can maybe even get this Restless Anchorage in? Think about Demolitioning Field even on the Rockface Village.
Yeah, I think I don't think he has enough to go for the flip the Beza and animate the land, so might as well just use the field and do this attack for 6, go up to 9, and then man, Wesley with Sean on 9 top decking. I'm trying to think the best draw is probably what Challenger, activate Rockface Village, hit double strike probably. How about a mountain? Is that going to do it?
That's not going to do it, but it is going to be good enough for Sean Gallagher to move on to 4-0 with blue-white control. Someone we see play a lot of blue-white here on the series and doing it pretty well today. We're going to have to see if you can keep that up, as this is the halfway point in our tournament. 8 rounds of Swiss today. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with round number 5. We'll see y'all very soon.